Hello.
So again, we appreciate you coming and sharing your stories. When when we first met, we connected. When I first met Bill, there were some great connections, and one of them was this sense of gratitude, because Bill is my personal hero. He's in a way, because like many of us here in this conference, I'm a Korean background, and you're, I think, the only Korean War veteran that I know personally. And if it wasn't for you and the sacrifice of many U.S. troops, there's a lot of American blood in the Korean peninsula, and if it wasn't for that, this wouldn't be happening today. So I want to express appreciation for that in public, and I want you to share with us a little bit what was Korea back then. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, John, for having the Draper family here. This is very exciting. It's the first time we've appeared on the stage together.
Other than at family brunches on Sundays.
John and I did meet. He's an entrepreneur, and I'm a venture capitalist, and that's like yin and yang. And we have a very strong admiration in our small, which is mostly now foundation. I don't do any venture work anymore, but we have a great admiration for this guy. He's active and energetic, and he's done a terrific job to pull all of you together. So I'm delighted to be here. I was called, I had been in the Army. I've been in the 82nd Airborne, and then was called back when I was at Harvard Business School because I had a reserve commission. And so when I got to the airport and flew over to Japan first, I was sitting next to a young guy, and he and I became fast friends, and we spent a couple of, I would say about a week together in Tokyo before going down to we took the ferry over to Busan, and then a troop train up to the front line, which was in the Iron Triangle near Kumwa. We then separated, and he went into one company and I went into another, and we were both second lieutenants, platoon leaders. I went over the first chance I got to see how he was getting along, and he was just putting on a flak jacket and about to go out on a patrol that night, and I didn't think much of it, except the next day I learned that he was killed that night. And I talk about that in my book because I point out how lucky some people are and how unlucky others are. And we were both 24 years old, and I've had a very exciting, a lot of variety in my life, and that one was snuffed out. But I think of him often, and I think his life was not in vain, because there's a book called Nothing to Envy, which describes what is, it's written by a Los Angeles journalist, and she lived in North Korea for a while and told stories about North Koreans, true stories, and how they got out and escaped through China typically, but escaped to South Korea. And I think it's in that book that there's a picture right in the front of, at night, all the lights in South Korea and all the darkness in North Korea. And I think how lucky those of you who grew up in South Korea are, and how important it was that that young boy gave his life for a really important cause. So now that's the end of all the serious talk. I want to say that the next time I went to Korea, I went with the Secretary of Treasury, who was then Jim Baker, and he got off the plane, and by the time the cameraman got the picture, he got a picture of me coming off the plane, and the headline the next day in the paper with a big picture of me was, Secretary of Treasury of the United States arrives in Seoul. And it was me.
So you were Secretary of the Treasury
for an instant.
Yeah, in Korea only. Yeah.
Then I went back another time, and I knew the ambassador, and he gave me a very good visit. And then we went to a small restaurant, and he lined me up with a beautiful girl, and I still, and you know, each of us, it was a party in a way, but a small one, and each of us would have to sing a song to, you know, break down any tension there was. And of course I sang Old Black Magic, as you can imagine.
This is a very strange experience to listen to this.
And I'm tone deaf.
He's tone deaf
But
from the war. You know, one
Anyway.
of the years didn't work out quite so.
Anyway, my regret is the chauffeur drove me and this girl back to the hotel, and I, to this day, regret saying goodnight to her right there at the car. So that's the end of that story. I love Korea. I don't like kimchi, to be honest.
Ooh, I like kimchi.
The other link that I want to bring is, you know, during your decade or a little over a decade of public service between your time in Silicon Valley, then Washington, D.C., then in New York, you headed the largest multilateral aid agency of the UN Development Program, and that's where I started my career as well. So you were the second highest ranking officer at the UN, under Secretary General, and you spent a lot of time traveling to many countries, and then you returned to Silicon Valley. Can you tell us how that time of public service altered or affected your return back to venture capital?
Yeah, John, thanks for asking that. I knew only about business in America, and when I got back from that UN assignment, I had been to 101 developing countries and about 11 rich countries. UNDP, those of you that don't know, raises money from the rich countries and then has about 8,000 programs for projects all over the world in 140, 50 countries. And I got to know a lot about the world. And so when I came back here, I realized venture capital seemed to be limited to America and almost limited to Silicon Valley. And I thought, well, Asia is really growing rapidly. I'm going to try to start something. And the only business I knew was venture capital. So I'd like to start a venture capital company in Asia. Then I met a young woman who was still Stanford Business School, second year, and she and I became partners. We picked India for our program, and we decided we could only handle one country. Hired a few people in India, and that teed up the opportunities, and then she and I'd go every. Well, we ended up going about 25 times to India, and we'd stay for about 2 weeks at a time, and it just happened to hit everything right. We were the first venture capital company in India, and by the way, I was a partner I wasn't a partner, but I was an associate at Draper, Gaither and Anderson, which was my father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather's. It was the Draper, and he had run the Marshall Plan in Paris, and his deputy was Fred Anderson, and they decided to start a venture capital company in Silicon Valley.
The first.
Which was not called Silicon Valley, of course, on the Stanford campus. And so it's, in that case, you know, they lasted about 6 years or thereabouts and didn't do great. They made a little money. But they were kind of a little too early. It turned out we in India, being first in India in the Draper International program, just timing was perfect. There were some Indians here in the valley who had made money, and it was a cross-border kind of a fund, and we returned 16 times the limited partners' money in 6 years. So that's a record that stands, and it's all because we were first. The timing was good, late 90s, so we have great love for India as a country, and I didn't pick Korea, but I might have done even better there. I don't know. But in any event, that's the way my life went.
Yeah, I feel that that sort of broke the glass ceiling for global venture capital in a way, and then came other great investments like Skype. We were talking about, you know, Tim, can you share a little bit how that Skype investment happened, the
sure.
Behind the scenes?
Actually, you know, one of my best investments was in Ilshin in Korea, because it was the year 1999, it was late 1999, and I made an investment into a venture fund in Korea, and my other 1990 investments in 2000 just went like that, down 90%. And Ilshin, 2 or 3 years later, returned me exactly the amount that I put in. Wow. And that was way
That's
better.
That's called a winner in those days.
That was way better than anything else. And I've taken, I think, 4 trips to Korea. The first one was meeting those guys from Ilshin. The second one, I believe, was setting up DFJ Athena. And we're really thrilled to have that relationship. And the third one, I brought Adam, and we went and had Taekwondo lessons, and sang karaoke, and we got a good feel for the place and ate a lot of kimchi, which I like, by the way. I think.
You can get my share.
Yeah, and had a wonderful time there, and. Adam remembers the traffic. I remember the market and the traffic and the.
I remember the Taekwondo.
Yeah.
I had a high kick. I remember it.
Walking on the walls.
Yeah, it was great.
And then the
walking on the walls.
Yeah, you can run up the walls.
Yeah, they're like pads on the wall. You try to run up them. It was fun.
You run up from one wall to the other, and you kind of can
accelerate
up.
You
it's
try,
like flying.
You try to kick at the end, and it didn't work, but it was, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the fourth time, I got to meet President Lee, and I realized that I'm sure that President Park is terrific too, but President Lee was a terrific man, and I was thinking, gosh, why isn't he running this country? He was business oriented. He was focused on making sure Korea was a a great success internationally. He's focused on GDP growth, employment, getting people, going. I think the other thing I noticed every time I went to Korea, I said, this country is more advanced than any other country in the world. And if they, if they spoke the money language, if they spoke English more, I think Korea would be the most powerful country, or at least the wealthiest country of the world. It was interesting because I saw the first multiplayer game in Korea, and I met a guy who was a billionaire from Korea, and he said, "Yeah, have you heard of this game?" And I forget what it was called, Legend, something like that. And he said, "Yeah, I'm totally hooked." Lineage, yeah. So he said, "I'm totally hooked," and he said, a quarter of our country is hooked on this game, and I said, "Well, wow, that's great." And he said, "Yeah, and I have to keep my avatar going when I'm at work, so I've hired a guy to do my avatar during the day while I'm at work, so that my guy keeps advancing." And then that was the first time. And he said, "Yeah, and my son, what I bought him for his birthday was a $10 sword." And I said, "Oh, well, that's great." And he said, "No, a virtual sword." And it was the first I had ever heard of anything being virtual, and that there was incredible value to virtual goods. I don't know why I didn't end up getting into Zynga after that, but anyway, I didn't. So Korea has a big piece of my heart too, and so thank you, Dad, for fighting for South Korea. I sure hope that eventually all the North Koreans figure out that they can, if there's some way of escaping and getting to South Korea, I think that would be terrific. And so anyway, so picking up where we left off. Yeah, Dad pioneered the international venture capital thing, and I just sort of rode on his coattails and set up offices in China, Korea, Singapore, London, Russia, Brazil. I think we're in about 12, 15 countries or something. And by being first, we were able to sort of capitalize on, funding the search engine for China, or finding Skype. In China, we also had Focus Media and YiPay, two other companies that are probably worth several $billion. And it was interesting for us. I'll give you a little of the Chinese experience. When we first funded Chinese companies, it was really because Dad, when he was at the UN, he took me on a trip to Beijing, and we drove in the only car on the only paved road to the only Americanized hotel at that time. And I got to go back to China about 15 years later, and I saw that there was this build-up potential for a free market economy, and people were really ready to go. And then when I started investing in China, I started by investing in 3 or 4 companies that said they had really good government connections, and we lost all our money in those. And then I thought, well, how do we really make money here? And it's really to invest in those really extraordinary individuals, these creative, driven, young, dynamic people who really want to change the world in one way or another. And here they are. And so we started to fund some of them, and that's how we ended up backing Baidu and Focus Media and then ultimately YiPay and a number of others. And Perry Ha will be coming and talking to you about the interesting things that have been happening at DFJ Athena. So maybe we pass the torch.
So I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle. I have not met the president of Korea. I'll meet the next one.
By the way, I met the first one when I was Syngman Rhee. Yeah, after being on the front line of Korea in Korea for about, I don't know, 6 months, I got pulled back to be the aide to the Corps commander, and every week we interacted with Syngman Rhee. At that time, he had a very clean, good reputation. It weakened a little, I think, over the years. But that was the very first president. So go ahead, Adam.
Great. Well,
work on your time.
Well, yeah, no, it's okay. Take as much time as you want. So what I'll go about this from sort of what I've seen based off of what they've seen and sort of what I'm seeing right now happening. So my grandpa, I call Pops, and it's very difficult for me to call him Bill. Well, Pops, what he was able to show with India is that there are entrepreneurs outside of this country to me. And then what my dad was able to show is that entrepreneurship is literally everywhere in the world. And then to me also, I think that the 2008 financial crisis showed to me that we're a global economy. We're not only tied together by, there aren't, like, financially we're all tied together now. And so what I'm seeing is this trend of globalization. I mean, the reason that this conference is happening, we're trying to bring entrepreneurship to the world. And so I try to look at ideas and trends and things that will affect not only the US, not only Korea, but will be able to break down borders across the world. One of those I'll bring up is Bitcoin. I don't know if anyone's very familiar with the digital currency, but the reason that it originally resonated with me was that it was without even trying, it is the closest thing to a global currency we have. And I jumped on board. I got very, very excited about it. I was infatuated with the passionate community. And in Boost VC's accelerator class right now, we have 7 Bitcoin companies. I also, as a badge of honor, I got subpoenaed by the New York Financial Services Department because I was one of the top 20 Bitcoin companies who did anything in the industry. Don't
be the first Draper to go to jail.
Yeah, Bob still isn't a believer, but he will be. And so I think that the trends that are happening are things that can actually, they change the world. They're transcending borders. They're really creating a great new world for everyone. It's moving us more towards Star Trek: The Enterprise.
Dad, about that jail thing.
Have you been there?
Is it okay if I move this? I feel like I'm all the way over here.
Oh, okay. It's good. It is interesting that now Adam has this great incubator Boost that has attracted companies, people from all over the world. And I think that's a tribute to him and to the Silicon Valley being a great attractor of entrepreneurship. And I think that credit goes to the people who sort of set that whole environment up about 50 years ago.
This guy.
Yeah, where Dad and his buddies set up the venture capital community, and Hewlett and Packard allowed their employees to moonlight, and Intel made its big breakthrough. And back then, California had the best education system in the world. Literally #1 amongst the states, and the U.S. had the best education system at that time. And we've rested on our laurels sort of long enough. I think it may be time to shake that back up. And now I know that Korea has a terrific education system, and so naturally 50 years from now it might be an entirely different story. But I felt a little bit of this, that America was sliding a little bit and California was sliding a little bit. And so I set up Draper University of Heroes because I think the world needs more heroes. And it's interesting to me to know that now it's interesting. Korea, your government is knocking on my door, making sure that many, many Koreans come to Draper University of Heroes, so I really appreciate that. More than half of our students are from international, and now fewer and fewer are coming from the U.S. It's quite extraordinary that there is that incredible dynamic to come to a school that breeds entrepreneurs. It's coming from all over the world.
You know, I was going to hold onto this question towards the end, but just in case we run out, I'll bring it up right now. You know, the first venture capital in Silicon Valley was your father's, Draper, Gaither and Anderson. And my understanding from reading Bill's book, which is a fascinating read, I read it once again to prepare for this talk, and I read it again in 2 nights, so it was great.
What are you doing tomorrow night?
Watching Breaking Bad. but anyway, so my understanding is that that was the first VC, and they pioneered what is now commonly used as the LP model, where limited partners invest in a venture capital fund, and then the general partners manage, and that's how basically most VCs today function. But now today, and I know Adam's been involved in this area too, we have sort of on the other end of the spectrum, crowdfunding, and you know, we have AngelList, you know, Kickstarter, and so on. Where do you see this going? Do you think we're going to have, you know, anybody now being able to invest in the next Googles of the world? Do you see the traditional LP model continuing to be there? Your general thoughts on that?
Why don't we ask Adam? He's closest to it.
Yeah, so I think crowdfunding is really interesting. I actually launched Boost. Originally was a crowdfunding site called Boost Funder. We were connecting investors and entrepreneurs. It was actually, we came up with the idea before it was called like crowdfunding officially. I find it to be a really fascinating thing because if you think about it in history, crowdfunding isn't a new concept. When you're raising capital as a startup, you have to go to the crowds and you have to pitch everyone you can. The power of what now is called crowdfunding is that we can use this vehicle called the internet in order to access large amounts of people out there in the world who can actually, you're accessing a larger demographic of people, so naturally you might be able to raise more money. Obviously, I think what Kickstarter, what Funders Club, what AngelList is now doing this, are all showing is that this is wanted. It's almost needed. It's the next generation of the friends and family round. You don't need to just depend on your friends and family to give you money. You can actually raise money or pre-sell products. Or I think it's already happening. Yeah, I mean, I think crowdfunding is a great wave that's it's happening right now. It's a trend that's going on, and I'm excited about it.
I actually think it's one of many things that are really transforming venture capital and the entrepreneurial environment. I think it's the LP-GP relationship is going to change, and I think the GP entrepreneur relationship is going to change. I think what's great about Boost and other incubators is that they allow the entrepreneurs to start at a new level where they don't have to do all the things that they used to have to do to get going. It's much easier. It's much quicker. It's quicker to incorporate. It's quicker to get your, you can incorporate with VentureDocs or LegalZoom. You can use e-shares to keep track of all the shares out there. You can, so I think that whole, you can then go to a Kickstarter or a Angel List or other crowdfunding sites to get money from your customers and from investors. So we had a great company, a great experience where this guy created a watch where you could read your email and do it very subtly, you know, on your watch. And I said, sure, I'll put some money into there. And then he came back to me. He said, God, I think we're out of money, and it doesn't look good. And you know, we thought we might just put something up on Kickstarter. And I said, yeah, go ahead, put something on Kickstarter. And this is the Pebble watch, and the Pebble got $10 million on Kickstarter, $5 million worth of orders, and $5 million just from people who wanted to see him succeed. And suddenly he was not only in business, but you know, taking over the watch display business. And so this is a whole new thing. And at that time, venture capitalists were saying, God, I'm not funding any hardware. And just because that, you know, you have to hold inventory and you have to do all these horrible things. Now they're saying, hey, yeah, I'll invest, and then you can put it up on Kickstarter, and off you go.
I would just add to, I mean, I don't disagree with anything that's been said, but I do think that there will always be an important role for the venture capital community, and that is the combination of coaching, introductions, tweaking the strategy of the entrepreneur. There's a relationship between the entrepreneur and a good venture capitalist that is very, you know, 1 and 1 makes 3. It really is important, I think, for an entrepreneur to have some interested partner who's interested in building the business, perhaps even beyond the vision of the entrepreneur, and patient investor, an investor who is a partner and not an antagonist. So I think there will always be a role that will be very important for the venture community. But certainly this other element of financing is a whole new ballgame and very interesting to watch.
It's also exciting to see the trends of it's never been cheaper to start a company and it's never been easier to access capital sort of start to merge together. So now hardware's hot with venture capitalists because all of a sudden the public chooses whether or not an item is going to be created.
Thank you for those thoughts. In a way, Silicon Valley has been global for a long time. You know, a lot of the big entrepreneurs of today come from overseas. You know, Yahoo, Skype, Hotmail. Can you mention a few of those foreign-born entrepreneurs that really, you know, you mentioned many of them here in this book, but that really impressed you, and you know, and how you see more of those global entrepreneurs coming to Silicon Valley and succeeding?
You might talk about David Lee.
Yeah, that's a good idea. My first, one of my earliest investments was with a guy named David Lee, who came to me and said he wanted to start a company with a daisy wheel printer. Well, I had no idea what that was. And they said, well, you know, the IBM Selectric has that golf ball sort of printer, typewriter, and I'm going to replace that. Well, I thought that was it was a very popular typewriter at the time. And he was from China, had come over to Silicon Valley, worked for another company that we had backed called Diablo in the disk drive field. And this daisy wheel printer idea was to have a very light plastic circular disc that had on the edges the alphabet, and it would go either left or right because it had a computer in it, which was sort of novel in those days. And anyway, David started a company called Cume, Q-U-M-E. David made a lot of money on Cume. We made a lot of money with Cume. And selectric typewriter you don't see anymore because this was really the first, in a way, it was the first word processor. So then I happened to be president of the Harvard Business School Association here in San Francisco at the time, and I said, you know, we should have a dinner and honor the Entrepreneur of the Year. And it was at that time about a board of 4 people, and we had our dinners, and there were about 24 people that would come to the dinner. And so we did this and honored him because it was my idea, so I said, and I got a great idea for the man who I think is the Entrepreneur of the Year, David Lee, Chinese background. And that was, I got to tell you this story. I told him to park in the Bohemian Garage in San Francisco because we were meeting at the Bohemian Club at that time. And he parked there. He and his wife and me and my wife walked down to get our cars, and they said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Lee, your car's been stolen." He had a brand new BMW. He was so proud of it. He paid for it with a little of the money that he made and man, I was shocked. I've never heard of a garage saying that your car was stolen. They drove it down the ramp there, and I don't know if you know the Bohemian Garage, but I don't park there anymore. But anyway, now Harvard Business School gives a dinner once a year for the Entrepreneur of the Year. And of course, on this big list of them, and they print the list every year, is Facebook and Google and Twitter and, you know, all of them. And there are now, you know, that was probably, I hate to say it, maybe 40 years ago. And at the very first is Cume. And so I'm very proud of that investment, but I'm very proud of David Lee, and I'm very proud of America when it encourages immigrants to come to this country, particularly brainy ones like David, and they have done so much for this country, and we're a country of immigrants, and it sometimes gets overlooked as to how important. A lot of people in the middle, you know, in the middle of Washington say, "Oh well, they're taking jobs away from our good old American employees," and the truth is, 1 out of every 2 companies that were started in Silicon Valley had at least 1 immigrant in the starting team, and the creation of jobs just out of Silicon Valley has been astronomical compared to the number of jobs that immigrants have taken away from other domestic employees. So hats off, and thank you for suggesting that. Yeah.
Great. And you know, you've heard of Skype and Baidu. They worked out really well. They weren't immigrants, but they were not American. But Adam's got a story.
Okay. I thought you were going to go into it, into yours thing. Yeah, so actually, I'm on the board of a company. It's called Ender's Game, and he is a Korean, and he's actually the reason I'm doing what I'm doing now. He came to me, and we started a really good relationship at my first company called Expert Financial, and he came to me. He was trying to build this stock market game where you you invest fake money so that you can create some form of a track record so that, and he was trying to raise money. He actually turned down money from my dad because the company was in turmoil and they were trying to, it was a good thing that he turned down money because he wasn't sure where he was going to be in the next 2 months. But then I worked with him over the next 2 years, or year. Now it's been 4 years, but okay, so then it had been 1 year, to build out a plan to build something called Wall Street, the game. And he was really passionate about this idea. It has since transformed into a studio that develops really, really fun asynchronous games. And he has, I mean, the influence he has had on my life was that I found what I love to do, which is help passionate people do what they love. And I created that into a career over the course of that time. He was the first person I had helped come up with their idea, build product, and raise capital. So I mean, so if I have anyone to thank, it is him for, yeah, that's.
And actually, immigrants were leaders in parametric technology, Tesla.
These are your investments.
Yeah.
Elon Musk.
Skype and Baidu were outside. Pretty much all of our big successful investments were led by someone from outside the U.S.
Well, thank you, and I think that's, you know, as you can tell, this talk can go, you know, all day, and we really appreciate that at least we could capture you for this treasureful 40 minutes. And we, you know, we have the opportunity to indulge your time a little more. We asked you if you could judge 5 of the great Korean startups, and you very kindly agreed to do so. So this is a treat that I would have loved. I think any entrepreneur would have loved to be able to pitch to all 3 Drapers at once. You know, I don't think
Actually,
it's.
has this ever happened?
Yeah.
No.
This is first time in history.
Our wives might think differently.
Yeah.